Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again for another Wednesday reveal. We have Michael Lacopo again below me, and then we have Karen, who was his amazing captain for this week.
Good to see you all.
Hello.
Okay, and to begin with, I'm going to go ahead and give just a little bit of information about WikiTree, and then we're going to dive right in because I'll tell you what, this team just went crazy getting everything done this week. They were incredible up to the last minute. So for anybody that is new out there, WikiTree is a community of genealogists who are working together on a single family tree. So in other words, we collaborate to make an accurate global tree that connects us all, and it's free. Now, the WikiTree Challenge has been our year-long event and part of our year of accuracy, where we have taken a guest star every week and we've had our team members work on their tree to make them as accurate and complete as we possibly can, and hopefully more so than anywhere else. So once again, we have Karen as our captain this week, and she's going to give you a little bit of information about, well, a lot of information really, about Michael's tree.
That's right. We had some fun this week. We're proud of our collaboration and our international team, but this week it really showed.
Well,
It wasn't. Go
I'm a
ahead.
I'm a mutt. So you got Italy, you got Switzerland, you got Germany, you got so
Right.
I
You
gave
were
Yeah,
you
asked,
you
to choose from.
right.
you were
You gave us
actually called NATO at one point this week.
right.
So
Mike's tree is just like NATO. Um, yes, and it wasn't intentional, but we're highlighting a couple of countries here because it was really fun to watch a little bit of the race between the Italian experts and the German experts. They were kind of sprinting past each other. One would get ahead, and they were knocking down brick walls just like champions. So it was fun to see whether we were finding more there, with the Germans or the Italians. And so we looked at each of your 8 great grandparents, and kind of that's how we keep ourselves organized. And with the Lacapos which were the Italian part of your tree branches, there were some new parents found for Camilla Romeo. And in the marriage record, she married Francesco Triunveri, and it lists her parents were Bruno and Elisabetta Caruso, who were both alive when she married. Bruno, we found, was born about 1764, and he lived all the way to about 80, which is pretty impressive for that time period. His wife, Elisabetta Caruso, was 72 when she died. So those were 2 new ancestors we found there. And we really did go nuts with the Lacopo lines. They kind of exploded outward. Chris Ferriolo and our Italian project, they got to flex their muscle and show off all of their research skills. And we find ourselves with 17 new ancestors in this part of your tree. And when you wander through the branches, you'll see several Lacopo lines with all of this family coming out of Garace. We knew we were going to find common names, common ancestors, and we learned that 10 years ago there were only 1,043 people in Garace. And places like San Giovanni de Garace, where most of the Lacapos were coming from, there were only like 577 residents there in 2004. And unlike other parts of Europe, with all of the net migration, the population is not going up in this area. And we just learned a little bit about Garace, that it sits on this conglomerate of kind of a rocky shaped plateau, and had big harbor walls, and was all enclosed in like a fortress with a castle dominating the northern area, and all of these artifacts of the noble buildings that are out on the main arteries, and in the squares of the city. There are just majestic portals with coats of arms of the house that's engraved, and just lacquered by balconies that open up into open courtyards and gardens and churches. So we all want to go to Garace now to see the churches and the palaces with all the windows and portals made by the stonecutters, and all the tangling streets and alleys. and it was just neat to learn about how you've got all this urban texture and just centuries of history being embraced, but still being a modern city.
Yeah, and they didn't wander away. They're in Joace from early, and they just continue down that line. So it's great for genealogists because you don't
Right.
have to fudge too much.
Right.
But yeah, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
because the history is there, and maybe some of the children have moved away, but the families still are there. Huh?
Yeah.
So that power of that single place. Yeah. So when we're researching, sometimes this was a week of like, but wait, let's think about this again. When we limit ourselves to just a week instead of a lifetime of research, we make discoveries, but then we look at a branch again and we change it and go in a different direction. We found records that made it look like we had some paternal grandparents for a Domenico Lacopo and Anna Maria Letizia Pucci, and this would have made different parents for Domenico Michele or Dominic Michael than what you had, and then like 17 ancestors on that line. And then further research supported Pasquale Lacopo and Maria Teresa Lacopo as the correct parents.
Yeah.
So then the original line attached went back to Nicola, and then we found that we had some descendants from a different child that wasn't your Dominica, wasn't your ancestor, but we still wound up with 10 new ancestors. And Mindy, do you have any more even last minute updates or thoughts on this, since it's been changing? All the way
Really,
through
there's just some incredible work once again done by the Italy project. And Michael, both lines have actually been documented. Now, that second line that was initially thought to be Teresa's grandparents is actually a descendant, a cousin's descendant, coming off of Nicola,
Yeah.
higher up. And
I think I've got 3 or 4 different Lacopo lines, and then 2 of them come from Nicola. Yeah.
right, you have 4 of them, and, we thought we had it narrowed down to 3, so they were kind of excited about that part, and then they went, "Oh, wait a minute, but now we have these records, so I think he was right, and we need to put it back." But,
Yeah.
that happens. I mean, that's just part of researching.
And lots of Lacopos, and not a lot of originality with names. All
Yeah.
Domenicos, all Antonios, and Giuseppes. Yeah, they can be tough to sort out, but that's a lot of work in a week. I mean, even though you're in the same place, it's like you find one marriage, which means you have to go back to the births, and then you have to go back to the deaths, and you go back to the marriage, and like it's a lot of back and forth. That's fantastic.
Yeah, there were hours and hours spent looking
Yeah.
through these records, so pretty amazing.
Yeah, fantastic.
For sure. And on the same line, we were looking at Teresa, and your second great grandmother. Her last child was a daughter, Caterina, who was born in 1903 in Garace. Her birth was reported by a midwife because Bruno Antonio was in America at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He traveled back and forth, a lot of times to America, and so he rarely was the informant for his other children.
And the last 2 or maybe the 3, he was in America. So yeah, he came back just enough to make a new child.
Yeah,
I know. And it was surprising, though, to see the mother's name on the records. The midwife, as you know, was for the youngest daughter. But the other ones, they had the mother as the informant. And you're like, wow, okay, why is the woman's name in there so many times?
Yeah,
and
couldn't
then
she be home in bed?
yeah, I did the count on one of them. I was looking at some of the Italian projects work and Chris's work, Chris Ferriello. He's been just awesome this week. As we see people talking about in the chat. And I went, okay, so wait a minute, Chris, how often did he go back and forth? Because when he went to America on that trip, 10 months later, his child was born. So I guess he hopped back and went back. I mean, it's all documented. So.
Mm-hmm. And that was common for Italian immigrants. They were called birds of passage. They went back and forth mostly to make money, and so
right.
It wasn't
uncommon. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Even looking at Dominic in the South Bend papers, he was, up to the outbreak of World War I. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to open a store and I'm going to wholesale spaghetti and olive oil direct from Italy." So they were going back there all the time and bringing products to try to introduce. So we left while everyone was going nuts on Lacopo. We looked at Helen Marie Warner's lines, and just in the last day, we have proven parents for Christian Wolfe, your fifth great grandfather, and found that his father was Peter Wolfe and his mother Elizabeth Reeser.
So that's an error. That's been recopied over and over again. Yeah, because it's Peter's nephew, Peter, married an Elizabeth Kaiser, and that is a misreading for the wrong Peter in a wrong record. So that's been disproven, but it's been written over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
Okay, so we did the same thing. We almost found ourselves doing it with other branches, and so that will be interesting, and it'd be great to be in dialogue and collaborate and go, well, here's to look at where you turn that aside, and went in a different direction, and what made you choose not to accept Peter and Elizabeth.
Yes, currently Elizabeth's maiden name is unknown, so
okay.
Do not know who she is, but I know it's not research. So and I know where that went wrong, because a cousin of mine wrote a book and she misrepresented or misinterpreted a record, and it was actually for the nephew Peter, who married a Kaiser, which was in script, which she read as Reeser. So I know how that domino effect happens.
So do we have? So the Peter from 1740 in Bethel Township, and he's your guy.
Yeah,
the one who lived in Pitt Township in Allegheny County.
Yep, that's definitely him. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got the five children on the will, and then what we should get together on is Elizabeth and how she turned up, and whether we can convince you that we've got it, or whether no, that needs to be dismissed. And that's the fun of burning through all this in a week.
Yeah.
We've got some great volunteers who transcribe wills for us and enjoy doing that, which, boy, looking at some of the handwriting we saw this week, that's not my favorite thing. We know that when his will was proved, and so we know, obviously, he died before probate. And we've got that full transcription on the profile, so we can go and look at that. So we on the Ruthsats line, how do you say it? Ruthsats?
Ruthsats.
Yeah. So this is where we talked about our international experts, and Dieter Lieberens is certainly a great one to have on the German lines, and he went full steam ahead on this line, which is reaching all the way to Johann Heinrich Hohmann, born before 1743, a sixth great-grandfather. His son's marriage record, it was pretty hard to read, but it was clear that his father was Johann Heinrich, and that the wife's father was... his wife was the oldest daughter of Heinrich Beers. And so here we've got 13 new folks that we've added in Germany to this line. So that was really fun.
Yeah, and I love that the German records, records mention stuff like that. That's not something you find in the U.S. records, like where they'll say second son of, or, the oldest daughter, or things like that, whether the parents were living, those extra bits of information that kind of help you understand the family dynamics.
And I've worked with those church records in Bergdorf, and they are horrible to read.
Well, it looked a little clearer when we left Ruthsats and looked at Swarm on Clara's line. Now, am I skipping a slide? No. There we go. And here we had some breakthroughs on a Swiss line. So we found the baptism of Katharina Charlotte Moser, who became Mrs. Nussbaum, and her parents were Johannes, or Jean, on the French side, Moser, and Katharina Hummel. Jean and Katharina had 6 children, and they were always on a mountain. It seemed like they were in the mountains of Sorvilliers, and then they were in the mountains of Perry, Sortinon, Bévillard, where we last found them in 1811. So we know Johannes died after 1811. And on this line, we were looking at the Nussbaums from the mother. We had connected Mary Emmeline Nussbaum's parents pretty early in the week, but not very solidly proven. And so that came as we kept digging in. And we knew that it was felt that it was Christian Nussbaumer and Rhoda Lyda who were the parents, and were able to prove that. And that Christian's parents were Jakob and Catherine Moser, and then we proved Catherine's parents, the Mosers, and then we have some possible parents attached to Jakob that Johannes and Anna Lehman that we'll have to look more closely at.
Nope, that's all right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So at least we agree, or we're both right or both wrong together.
Yeah.
And on the Schwarm side, we looked at Frederica Caroline, the wife of Heinrich, and she was born in Alsenz in 1803, and that's called Rhineland-Pfalz now, the Rhineland-Palatinate. And Frederica was the daughter of Friedrich Schwarmann. He was a shoemaker, and Christina Weinold was Friedrich's wife, and Friedrich's grandfather was also a shoemaker, and he was the godparent at her baptism.
Mm-hmm. And the unknown there, on the backside. So David Vinnold's wife was Anna Margareta Schwarm. So Schwarm's Vinnold. So it's like the Lacopo family. Like they just keep intermarrying.
Yeah. So you feel that you've got Schwarm on both sides there.
Yeah,
Schwarm's father's father and the mother's mother.
Schwarm's marrying Schwarms, and Vinnold's marrying Schwarms, and Schwarm's marrying others. So yeah, it's I'm deeply interconnected to myself.
Nice. Ira Doherty, we didn't really smash walls here. We enjoyed learning about your great aunt Lillian and her notability, that her authorship of this series of books, that she traveled and lectured, read for Lighthouse of the Blind, many other things. Like myself, she was a member of Mensa. So did you know her well? So she lived
no, actually
95.
It was actually a kind of a joke, because my grandfather would say, "Oh, do you know Lillian was a member of Mensa?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you mentioned it before." He goes, "Well, I thought I would say it first because she says it every time she talks to someone."
That's hilarious. Yeah, I'm kind of like the member of the club that I don't know why they let me in, but
I'm a member too, and I got in my SAT score, so it's like it was you could really just sneak in really really easy. So
right, yeah. If you did well when you were 16, whether we're still smart now remains to be seen.
Yeah.
We looked at William Timmins, and you told us we were going to find criminals. There was some criminal element, but it was the victim. So Ada Young Kieser, who was your great grandfather's second wife, Josiah's second wife, she was murdered. Because she took a lover named Martin Greiner after Josiah died, and Martin had a whole murder suicide planned for Ada and himself. He did shoot himself in the head, but lived on for several days after the attempt.
I gave a lecture once, and just randomly I had a descendant of Martin Greiner in the audience, and so
wow.
Wow.
So that was
and she was oops. And he was featured in your lecture. So we went on to the Timmins branches and really struggled to add and find sources there. We spent some time on the Dawsons, and we we were going down the garden path again. We, latched on to that idea that he was in that 7th Pennsylvania, and then we were like, but wait, but no, he really only he signed an oath of allegiance, which is how my DAR patriot joined from southern Indiana, a Frenchman who signed an oath of allegiance in Vincennes. Um, and so Edward and we believe his father is also Edward, and they both signed the oaths of allegiance in Washington County, Maryland, in 1788, and that's documented and sourced on the profile from those revolutionary records of Maryland that I've just blanked on the names of the two folks that edited those. And we wrote up his migration to Ohio on the profile, where they sold their land in Ohio and then moved on to Tippecanoe County there by Purdue, right, for just a couple of years before Edward passed away. So that confusion, again, confusing that Edward Dawson, was it Davidson was the soldier? No, Dawson was the one who supported the cause by signing the oath. And we looked at, you've got 16 cousins in DAR from Edward, because you don't have to fight to be a patriot in these organizations. One of the DAR members under Edward Dawson is the late mother of one of our WikiTree members named Jean, a 5th cousin of yours.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so and Jean's a DNA tester, so we don't match that many of our 5th cousins, but maybe you'll match up with Jean.
Yeah, it's a good point, because many for a long time he was considered a soldier in the 7th Pennsylvania line, which was based on a 1930s DAR application,
right?
Which was erroneous. So I actually spent a lot of time writing up a paper disproving that's who he was.
Yeah, so, and now when you look on the DAR records for him, they don't breathe a word about Pennsylvania. It's
I actually submitted it to the National Society so they could fix it.
Yeah,
that's part of genealogy too, is fixing long-standing errors.
Right. Yeah, and luckily, since he signed that oath, they didn't have to kick the 16 ladies out of their organization.
I felt better about that.
Not that they would do that.
I didn't want a bunch of old ladies storming my house. So
right. Or not so old ladies like Mindy.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. We looked at Addie Knowles and we looked at the Knowles and the Fugates really closely, scrutinizing them this week, and we found that a great aunt, Sarah Knowles Yeoman, and your 4th great grandfather John Knowles were heavily involved in founding Rensselaer, where St. Joseph's College was, and the St. Joseph's Church is probably also connected with the Indian Normal School that was there for many years. And so we found that the Knowles and Yeomans were pioneers or organizers of Rensselaer.
Yeah, David Knowles is supposedly the first white child born in Jasper County, and the name of this town became Rensselaer because I think it was Stephen Van Rensselaer. One of the Van Rensselaers came from New York with a land patent that was on the land the Knowles were squatting on. So the Knowles got kicked off, the Rensselaers took it over, and thus got the name. So
it's not called Knowlesville.
They got cheated out of that.
Yeah, that was about halfway to Purdue from my house.
Yeah.
Well, those are the 8 great grandparents and all the family lines we looked at. It was a big week with a lot of participation. So Mindy is the queen of the fan charts, and she can tell us about what your tree looks like now at the end of the week on WikiTree and how all our WikiTreeers did.
Excellent.
All right. And before we do that, I'm going to touch on just briefly. And of course, Michael, you mentioned how difficult some of the records are. You already know from years of research on your family. But for those that didn't, this is what, they faced as far as some of the Italian records. And with any research, there's often challenges deciphering these. You can see one on the upper left that it actually doesn't show as much there, but it's pretty legible. But there are other ones that were really, they had big ink blotches, they had water damage, they had sections of the pages missing. And, our people would get together, several of them sometimes, and change the contrast, do everything they could, all get together and chat about it, that collaboration part coming together and
There are
tell,
some. I'm sorry. There are some in Jirachi that are half eaten by rats. Like there's half missing. Yeah.
yeah. So, and of course, with that area, we can't just go to Family Search or go to this or go check on Ancestry or check somewhere else. You either have Antonati or you have nothing. And so, if you go to Antonati and it's all, blotched up, water damaged, or whatnot, then you don't have those other records like the church records to fall back on to try and look that information up. So my hat's off to all of our researchers.
Yeah.
And then actually, Karen, I'll let you do this one before
Oh
I do the
yes.
fan charts.
Yeah, we really enjoy learning our history, and that always includes military history. So we like to document those who served or lended aid to the cause. So we saw the Daniel families in Virginia, and again, like we looked at Thomas Daniel, and there's definitely a Virginia seaman from um, Virginia serving on board ship, and there's a Thomas Daniel who made a public service claim that he should be paid back for the over $500 of supplies that and services he made to the cause. Um, so so here comes Ivy the dog to participate. Um, so we'll need to look at like we believe that Thomas rendered aid to the revolution, and that his son Charles provided supplies. We know, and again, Edward Dawson and the elder Edward both took the oaths,
Mm-hmm.
and we found this Jacob Beavers, your fifth great grandfather, serving in the War of 1812. Um, and just the sheer numbers of people involved in the Civil War. That Jacob Warner serving in both Pennsylvania and then also being affiliated with an Indiana unit a bit later in the war. Um, Andrew Wolfe, a third great grandfather, serving out of Ohio and lost a son. No, lost a brother,
Right.
George, who was killed in action near Raleigh in North Carolina. Um, John Stover died from typhoid. The deaths from disease and infection and illness, took so many as well. Um, a cousin who served out of Indiana from the Yeoman family, and William Lacopo, who died at the Marine Hospital at Mobile in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming all the way into World War One with Dominic, and noticing how he had to go register for the draft, even though he wasn't even a citizen. He had even been naturalized, but then he did serve in 1918. I think from June or July, and then was discharged like 4 days after Armistice Day.
Yeah. He never went overseas, and he got
Right.
his naturalization. It
Yeah.
became easier for aliens to naturalize based on military service. So
Right. So that was a way
in 1922, based on his service, he got kind of
got
a
to seal the deal.
streamlined passage to naturalization.
Right, which was great. But then 20 years later, just imagine the fear of them coming back at you for the old man's draft. And so he had to register in 1942, and wonder, are they really going to come after the 47-year-olds to serve when World War II was lingering on? Yes, so everybody gets the little, we call them stickers, when you're making a note about someone being a patriot according to a society or a member or service or just their ethnicity, highlighting roots from Germany or Italy or Switzerland. We enjoy highlighting all of these historical notes on our ancestors on the tree. Well, how did we do with the great big tree chart, Mindy?
We did pretty good. We started out, now this is what I used for reference, of course. I have to have something to mark where the available brick walls are. So according to Michael's own research, everywhere that you see the yellow portions out there, most of it out on the ninth generation. So his research is, really solid, getting out up to 8. Every one of those yellow spots is an possible brick wall ancestor. Now, we have added ancestors beyond that point on many of the lines, but we only count the very first one on each line as an actual brick wall ancestor. And then, as you can see in the pop-up out to the right, what all those little dots are on there, or that's where I've marked it. So a lot of the discoveries were focused on the paternal grandfather side, of course, and in that first one, fourth of the tree. But people worked so hard this week on all of it. It just really was incredible to watch. And for everybody out there, I'll show you. This is what we started with this week. So now there are the great grandparents that we talked about. We never on the challenge work closer than that, than the great grandparents for privacy reasons. But that is what we started with. Sometimes we have a guest that come on, a little bit of their trees already on WikiTree. We started fresh, which is kind of nice. And then this is what we ended up with. So once again, you can see, the explosions of work on the paternal side of the fan chart, but also in all kinds of places over on the maternal side. And I'd like to thank our researchers this week because we had some incredible help from the Italian project once again. And then, we talked about how amazing our German help was. And behind the scenes, though, there was also really, really great research done on Michael's mother's side. And, that isn't reflected as much on the brick wall chart as what a bounty point would be, or a brick wall ancestor. But people spent hours and hours this week researching some of those that, Michael's already researched, but we wanted to see if we could just push it even one generation beyond. And one of the great things about WikiTree is we have that beautiful white space on the profile. So, Michael, you'll see where people have left extensive notes on some of these so that you know where they looked, what they're, how they determined something, if they did make a decision on anything. But each one of these profiles that you see on this chart represents this total amazing effort this week. And, hopefully some of those notes will help you take down even more brick walls in the future.
Who's the Italian guy? Chris
Ferriello.
Okay, I'm kidnapping him, and we're going to go
Yeah.
to Italy and get the church records from the.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think you have a couple of people from the Italy project which would love to go too. They're all going to be climbing into the suitcase.
I really want to know if all my Lacopos come from a common ancestor, and I want to start a wide DNA study, but I already have too many DNA studies pending. I spend all my money on books and DNA, so.
Right. And of course, the civil registration didn't start until 1809, which is really quite late as far as research goes. And so you just don't have those unless you can get back there and actually go in the churches and look at the registers and hope they're intact.
The nice thing I think Chris saw, from what I saw on the chart, is that when they got married, they had to have permission from the fathers, and if the father wasn't alive, they had to prove his death. And if the fathers died, they had to get permission from the paternal grandfather. If he died, they had to prove his death too. So really, even though the records start in the early 1800s, you can really get those little hints back to the mid 1700s. Those records are fantastic, but yeah, you need to break into those church records, and I have too many Lacopos I need to unravel. So
yeah, I'll tell you what, we were saying the same thing, and Chris definitely was saying the same thing. It was just the curiosity was just getting to him this week. He says, "I want to be able to connect all these lines," and I was like, "Well, you go for it."
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, we only got so far, just like you only got so far. They got back as far as the available online records would let us. Really fun. I know I learned a lot in, trying to decipher. I learned how to decipher who the parents were and what some of the terminology was. And really, you're our first guest all year, amazingly enough, that has this strong Italian ancestry. So it's
something to do.
Yeah. So,
right,
this was
the Italian team. Yeah.
This was our first opportunity to actually learn about the Italian records and, watch that project in action. And it was really great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, I know they worked, some of them are around the clock. And I know there are a few of them that are going to continue this week since we will be having a break week. And they're really excited about being able to push those lines just a little bit further, even though they aren't going to get the points for it, which will lead us into the next topic. And that, of course, is our collaboration and scoring. So, collaboration is key during the challenge. And really, that's what WikiTree is all about, anyways. But it's great to see people galvanized and see it in action. Now, when you get 25 or even up to 40 or 50 people working on a tree, a set of branches, it's really easy to trip over somebody or research something that's already being researched. And, when your efforts can be best spent elsewhere. So on the left, you see the spreadsheet we use, and that's where we go in and hopefully put the profile we're working on. When we move up to the parents or move down to the children, whichever way in our research, we try and change that so other people know not to work on that specific profile. On the right, you see the G2G post, and Michael, you will get a link to this as well as some other stuff. And that's where we claim bounty points and, other discoveries or questions. Unfortunately, not a lot of it went into that this week, but there are some great comments and some good information out there. So it's really good. And then Discord. Now, this is our big way. This is our live chat platform that we're using right now. And I tell you what, it has just been an incredible thing for us this week, an incredible tool to use. Since we are a global site, we have people that chat in the challenge rooms around the clock. There's always somebody that's up in the world somewhere researching. And so, you can come in the morning and sip your morning coffee and read back and see what the England people were doing or, the German experts were working at and kind of catch yourself up. Now, we also do things like ask for help in there. We may want a will transcribed. One of our members, Stephen, is so awesome at those will transcriptions, really patient. And, we may be looking for an article. A lot of it this week was looking at those old records, and people would go, okay, now everybody, this is the one I'm trying to read the name on. What's the spelling? And six people would jump on it and put in their input and then, try to come to a consensus on what it might be. And so, there's nowhere else in the world that you have that kind of a resource available that we have with this challenge. And it really makes a huge difference to be able to reach out to 10 people at one time and just go, okay, everybody stop what you're doing and help me. And they do. Just really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, while it's not all about the points, we do have a point system that not only helps keep us motivated, but it also gives you a way to kind of track your progress and see how you're doing. And it's really been interesting to see over the year how that balance kind of changes depending on what the challenges are for that specific tree. Now, we have two ways to earn points. We have, once again, those bounty points. That's the big one. That's for the first brick wall ancestor we get to on any line. And the person that discovers that and creates the profile and proves it gets 10 points for that person. We also have the individual points, and some weeks those really add up. I didn't see that as much in your family branches as far as in the Italian and the German ones. You didn't have the big like 10, 15 kids like we've seen some weeks. And while Dieter is just amazing at finding the German children, I know with the Italian records, they really, really had a hard time because they'd sit there and have to flip through, 20 years of registers to see if there were any more children. And you get all the way through that and you have like, okay, he had 3 kids. And then you go to the next couple, rinse and repeat, and you do the same thing all over again. So very time consuming and much harder, I think, for the people that worked on the Italian branches to get those individual points. And, then on top of it, as Karen had mentioned, we had that really fun kind of back and forth between the German experts and our Italian experts. So, Germany was ahead for most of the week. Italy kept sneaking in there and they'd leapfrog over and they'd be like, aha, we just got, 4 new ancestors. Woohoo. And then pretty soon Germany would quietly come in and go, okay, so did we. So
Yep.
it just was amazing. And I look at two things when I do this. I look at the top 5, and I'm going to go ahead and read those off. Of course, Dieter Lieberens is our German expert, and he was in the top slot this week, all week, pretty much. Him and Chris Ferriello. Now, as far as bounty points, though, they went back and forth, and I have to say, the last time I checked, they were actually tied, which was amazing. And all of that happened like right at the last hour before the live cast started. So it just was incredible to watch them continue, to plug hard at those lines. Now, Kathy Rabenstein also worked on some of the German lines and worked on some of the United States research and did a great job out there. Melanie McComb, of course, is a prior guest, and she has just been awesome as a participant. And she was up there with the top 5. And then the 5th one would be our Maddie Hardman, who's just amazing. It seems like no matter what location we throw at her, Maddie can get in there and do something with it. And so now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at what those scores actually wound up being. So the first column for total points, and of course, there you see Dieter and Chris at the top. Now, the total points, Dieter, nobody was catching him this week. He was the man. Total points, though, for entire participants was 920 points. Now, we also had things that they didn't get points for. So, there's a wonderful space page that's linked that had kind of a mini one named study done with some really incredible research. And, there's peripheral relatives that people looked at, just to make sure they could rule something out or to try and figure out why somebody was in a household they shouldn't have been, trying to connect cousins. They don't get points for any of that. What they get points for are those bounty points and those direct ancestors. And then just the nuclear relatives. So within one step, children, siblings, if you add those, you get a point. So at any rate, we had 920 total points. Now we had 400 and what was it? 441 on the total ancestors. And 175 of those were direct. So those are all direct ancestors to you. Now, of course, Michael had some of those on the tree, on your own tree to begin with. But, we count everything that gets added from the start of the challenge just to keep track of where we're at. And then 305 of those nuclear relatives. So, once again, I know there's a lot of people working on it, but that many profiles created in a week, it just blows your mind to think of how much work goes into that, and actually sourcing them. And then the next number is the big one. Now, of course, bounty points. And you see that Dieter and Chris are tied at the top, 130 each. So that's 13 brick walls they each took down. And then all together, we are at an amazing 440. And another unique thing that we had this week is that we actually had 12 different bounty hunters this week. And I know that doesn't sound like a big number, but once again, a lot of our participants are backfilling stuff. Some of them are filling out those lines that we already knew about. Some of those are working on space pages. Some of those are doing things like the transcriptions. There's a lot of things that get done that aren't bounty points that people are doing. And it takes a team, just like it takes a village. It takes all of them, and it's all equally important. So the fact that we had actually 12 of them that pushed through those boundaries and hit brick walls, it was just really, really amazing. They did a great job. And then the final 2 numbers, we had 796 unique profiles were edited. So in 1 week's time, just crazy. And then overall, when we go in and we work on a profile and we add a date, we add a source, we fix a name, that's called a contribution on WikiTree, and our system automatically keeps track of that. And, this is only for the ancestors that counted. So those direct ancestors or nuclear relatives, this isn't even counting the edits on everything else. And still, people made over 3,000 edits to your branches. So, every time I think that they can't impress me any more than what they already have, then they do something like this again. It's just amazing. So, how do you feel like we did?
That's an incredible amount of excuse me, an incredible amount of research and information in a week. Especially even like the Italian lines. I've spent hours poring over those civil records, and it's a lot of work to extracting those, and especially even though you're working with a single record set in a single location. Like I mentioned, it's like there's if I look at my database, I've got like something like 27 Domenico Lacapos and like 15 Micheles and like 14 Giuseppes, and it makes your head spin. Like it's just completely. You're just like, I need a break. It's like I need to stop because my head's spinning. And then like the German. I mean, it's a lot of work in a week, so that's really impressive. Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I think having all those collateral relatives in there is great cousin bait, to have a tree that you can just send someone one URL and they can look at it and they don't have to sign up for anything, and you can see how it evolves. It's peer reviewed research basically, and being able to tie in the DNA testers, which is really fun for those of us who are
Yeah,
into that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And to just find like, oh, I didn't realize that there's a Y tester on my Dawson line. There's a
Yeah.
Mr. Dawson, on WikiTree, and his tree connects to your Dawson branches, and so then you get to know the Y DNA, hopefully, of an ancestor who didn't give you your Y chromosome.
Yeah, yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I can't even count anymore. In the time I've been on WikiTree, how many cousins I've had reach out to me, and they'll say, "Oh, I see your name was on this profile that I haven't even looked at in like 3 years." And they're like, "How are you related? This is how I'm related. Hey, let's exchange notes." And it's just a great way to get that kind of information and draw those people in without even having to do anything. Those lines
Right.
are there.
Or
Oh
sit
yeah.
on a BBS like in the 90s going, Lacopo, Swarm, Yeoman. Does anyone have Yeoman from Nebraska? Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. That's just it's an amazing feat. So I'm really appreciative of that. That's fantastic.
Okay, and unless we have anything else from the audience, I
I've,
think we've
oh, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I minimized. I had to put the full screen on, so I haven't really been watching the chat. So
Right. I noticed Stephen wanted to know what was going to become of the Discord channel. I mean, we've moved to our main WikiTree Discord now, and we've even got a general. So there we go. We've even got a general chat for the challenge itself. So what more can we tell them about that?
Well, we talked about it, and there has just been such an invaluable amount of research in that Discord channel that we were using before on that server that, we don't want it to just go away. So, if you want to leave the server, that's fine. We are not using it actively anymore at all, but we will not be deleting or getting rid of that because there's just hours and hours and hours of conversation and records and links to stuff, that are in those old rooms. All the conversation, of course, is occurring now on the main WikiTree server. If you are not on the main WikiTree server, I definitely recommend it. It has just been such a huge help with collaboration. It makes a really big difference. And then, of course, our challenge is I can't believe we've only got a few more guests left. We have 3 after you, Michael. That's it.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So everybody was, even though it's a holiday for many people coming up, people were getting in there working on your week. They're like, no, we're almost done. We got to help these people.
Yeah, and
A
all
lot of,
the Europeans and Australians saying, "Well, what are we going to do this weekend?" And
I
all the
know.
Americans are going, "Sleep off our turkey and give our staff members a break."
I'll just have to eat my Thanksgiving dinner at my computer so I can go over all the
Perfect.
neat stuff on there.
I know
Right.
that is one thing that we've had a lot of the guests say in the past is they're like they had no idea until they really started looking through it how much time they were going to need, to actually be able to stop and look at every profile,
Yeah,
and you will get a few documents by email, but for the most part, everything is linked on the profile or it's actually uploaded to the profile so that you can go ahead and take those and add those to your own records, and have that.
excellent.
Um, a lot to look through, though.
Hey, that's what genealogy is about. Lots of digging and shuffling and rifling through new stuff.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to let's go ahead and wrap this up. I want to wish everybody that is having dinner with their family tomorrow a happy Thanksgiving or a happy holiday. And for those of you that aren't, you could still go into Discord and chat with each other. It'll be there. Now, I know some of them are already still planning on, working on some of Michael's branches, and that room is still accessible. Feel free to go ahead and use it. And the following week, you guys will come back and rejoin us, and we will have Mary Roddy as a guest. And so that should be a lot of fun. I want to thank everybody that worked so hard on Michael's tree this week. Once again, you guys are amazing. You just blow my mind every week. It's so great. And, thank you, Michael, for letting us traipse through your branches
Oh,
and,
you.
look at it all. It really is, we love doing this. It just is so much fun. And I think we will say good night, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.